Thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
This meeting is being recorded.
We're being recorded. Okay, so just a little housekeeping. This is a webinar, so if you have any questions while we are doing the webinar, if you would just put it in the question and answer chat box at the bottom, and Jasmine or I will track those and ask the panelists as we go along. So to get started, our first panelist is Ariel Hamburger. Ariel is the board member and secretary of the Slow Foods of Urban San Diego. Wait, I already lost my spot. She works to create a more equitable food system of all San Diego residents. She's been instrumental in the county's local food system efforts and helped with the establishment of the Live Well San Diego Food System Initiative and chairs the San Diego Food System Alliance Healthy Food Access Working System. Ariel sees improvements in the food systems and builds an environment for a proxy of social justice and believes these approaches have the ability to transform communities. Ariel has also worked on cross-border issues through the county's Office of Border Health. She graduated with honors from San Diego State University with a master's in public health and a master's in Latin American studies. Welcome, Ariel. Our second panelist is Claire, see if I remember, Grubner? Close enough. She is the Director of Developments for Olivewood Gardens and Learning Center. She has a double BA in psychology, is alumni of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce LEAD Advanced Leadership Program and has been an Olivewood team member for over 7 years. She's dedicated to champion health equality, food justice, and anti-racist food fundraising and philanthropy. That was a mouthful. Claire serves as a DEI Community of Women Give San Diego, participates as a member of the Catalyst San Diego in Equality and System Change learning groups, collaborates on a community-centric fundraising San Diego Development Professionals Learning Group, and is a member of the National Food Systems Leadership Network through the Wallace Center. Claire oversees and leads Olivewood's fund development and marketing programs, supports program development and evaluations, develops community relations, supports community advocacy, and represents Olivewood in the San Diego Food System Alliance Stewart meeting. She was selected as the 2021 40 Under 40 in the San Diego Metro. And our third panelist is Ellie Brown. As the co-executive director of the San Diego Food System Alliance, Ellie oversees the nonprofit administration and resource development domains, ensuring that the Alliance is achieving impacts towards its mission. Sorry for the background noise, guys. I live downtown. Ellie began her journey at the Alliance as a part-time consultant in 2015. Since then, the Alliance has blossomed into an extensive network of over 150 multi-sector organizations and advocates for $1 million in operating budget. Ellie is a first-generation American, having spent the majority of her life in San Diego and Japan. Ellie enjoys the ability to contribute her business and consulting skills set to a cause she loves, food and community. After receiving her undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley, Ellie began her career in the private sector in finance services and management consulting companies in Japan. Focusing on social entrepreneurship and finance at Duke's MBA program inspired Ellie to commit to a career addressing complex societal issues. Ellie is passionate about network movements and social change, working together to create a long-lasting change in our society. Prior to joining the Alliance, Ellie worked in nonprofits consulting at Root Cause and as an independent advisor to nonprofits, social entrepreneurs, and foundations on building organizational capacities and maximizing communities throughout collaborations. So ladies, I would like to thank you for being here tonight. And we are going to get straight to the issues of, could you describe your current work with food insecurity?
y'all
Anyone
want me
can
to
start.
kick it off? Sure.
Sure.
So thanks, Peggy, and everyone for attending. I am an outgoing board member of Slow Food Urban San Diego, but I'm also a community health program specialist with the County of San Diego in our chronic disease and health equity unit. So I might oscillate between hats tonight. But in terms of what we do, well, first I might reframe it a little bit too, because I think Ellie and Claire will appreciate this. I think the three of us, we work quite a bit together in the food system world in San Diego. It's a big but small and interwoven space. And instead of food insecurity, we tend to really prefer other terms that might be new to folks this evening. So I would say we tend towards nutrition insecurity because we're really not just interested in people having access to food, but people having access to good quality food that nourishes them, makes them healthy, makes them well. And then we also are oftentimes really focused more on food sovereignty and making sure that people are able to access and grow their own food if they so desire, and food that is, culturally resonant with them. So those are just a couple of terms that I think are important to throw out because we will probably reference them quite a bit throughout the evening. From Slow Food's perspective, we are a local chapter of an international nonprofit organization that was founded in the 80s in Italy as an antithesis to the fast food movement, hence the name Slow Food. And our vision is really simple. It's good, clean, fair food for all. It's simple in the sense that it's like didactic and easy to say. It's not simple in what we're looking to achieve. Because when we break that down and we talk about good, clean, fair food for all, we're really talking about not only the quality and nutrition of the food, but also how we're treating our workers, how we're treating our earth, how we're treating our animals, and also maybe like taking away that term of our because it's so extractive and ownership based and more seeing the world as a symbiotic space. So Slow Food in concept and for a long time was really operating more from this like foodie space and supporting local businesses who adopted or supported this mission. And I think more recently, along with a lot of movements in the world, we've oriented ourselves more towards a justice space and looking at how we can create, again, food sovereignty and nutrition insecurity for everyone, especially in the San Diego region. And so that's more conceptual ideas. In terms of what we actually do, we are a full volunteer board. So every single person on our board has a different job that takes up most of their time. And a lot of our work is more focused on supporting local initiatives like Olive Wood and like San Diego Food System Alliance and the boots on the ground work that they're doing, as well as a big emphasis of our work is on supporting local fishermen and the Tuna Harbor Dockside Market, which if you've never visited, I highly recommend. It's on Saturday mornings from about 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we're also focused on supporting some of our local school food programs as well. So I'll pause there and hand it over to Claire or Ellie.
I'm going to jump in. Again, I'm here on behalf of Olive Wood Gardens and Learning Center. We are a nonprofit organization located in National City. And I would say that we are really focused on health equity and food justice. So also some more terms to kind of throw around, but health equity is really looking at the systemic barriers that are based in racism that are causing disproportionate health challenges for different communities, particularly communities of color. And so looking at how, how our current food system has really influenced and created a lot of these inequities and really looking at ways to address them. and food justice, thinking about, as Ariel was saying, making sure that food that people have access to, well, first of all, they have access, it's affordable, it's culturally relevant. And then there's the food sovereignty piece where people really have the choice. People are able to make a choice because they have that power. And so there's a lot of systems change that's involved in that. And I would say we started out about a little over a decade ago, focused on the education piece. And so education is really important. We do some, health literacy through nutrition education and that type of education for everyone. We have children's programs all the way through, adults, high school students. We do sustainable urban agriculture education, really supporting people in gaining skills to grow their own food. And also, helping to develop job skills and things like that. And then we moved over the past several years into the access space. So seeing that, to really change some of the, the inequities that we're seeing in our community, we have to, it's not just it's not a silver bullet. You have to address it at multiple levels. So access, we provide, thank you. Yes, it's also a really beautiful space. Thanks for reminding me about that important piece. We do have a really gorgeous space in National City, so I would welcome everyone to come visit. And at that wonderful space, we do grow food, and we grow it for our programs, and we also grow it for our community. So we partner with an organization through San Diego State University called Brightside Produce to offer olive wood grown fruits and veggies and herbs at local corner stores. We grow food for our local national school district. And then we also typically have a produce stand that's donation based, so folks can kind of self-select and, really have access to locally grown food, but that there's no barrier to that. And then there's the advocacy pillar. So education, access, advocacy. Advocacy includes supporting our community and developing leadership skills and developing confidence to address city council, to address the school boards, to really engage with policy decisions, policy makers, and then really supporting different types of food related policy and advocacy efforts that I can share more about as we continue the conversation. But I'd say those three pillars, everything food, really, towards the goal that our community is in charge of their own food, that there's no one making that decision for them. I'll pass it off to Ellie.
Oh, well, thank you guys. That was a great reframing. This conversation so elevated already now. So thank you both. And I want to talk a little bit about the San Diego Food System Alliance, because I sort of consider ourselves as, I don't know, we used to call ourselves the scaffolding or something that really kind of brings this beautiful ecosystem together, or that's doing work on food issues from seed to soil. And really, I think food system, our issue is a food system and creating a more sustainable, just food system in San Diego County. And when we talk about a food system, like in the most simplest sense, it's a set of relationships, that need to be reimagined. But it's a set of relationships that move resources from farm or ocean to plate and back into the soil. And maybe that's not the right way. Maybe even resources is the extractive word, Ariel, but that's basically what it comes down to is the set of relationships. And it's very much influenced by our economic system, which obviously is supported through public policy, what you all care about. So really it's a very systemic issue. It's a structural issue. And the Alliance San Diego Food System Alliance, we are a network of organizations and advocates in here in San Diego. And our network right now consists of nonprofits, organizers from different neighborhoods across San Diego County that are food insecure, food and farm worker communities, farmers, fishermen, food business communities, and folks kind of working on the inside and in public agencies like Ariel. And we're really intentional now about creating a very diverse and inclusive network, and to create a long-lasting movement towards this sustainable just food system in our region. So when it comes to creating a diverse and inclusive network, we have taken a pretty deliberate, intentional approach with JEDI, and Ariel's part of the JEDI committee, has been, but it just requires a lot of thoughtfulness in centering communities and making sure that we are creating inclusive spaces and inclusive ways for engagement, eliminating barriers. Ongoing learning process. It's a journey, but that's our approach. And recently, the Alliance went through a 2-year kind of listening process, deep listening process, engaging with over 300 organizations across sectors and over 3,000 individuals. Majority of those individuals were from communities that we would consider most marginalized by the dominant industrialized food system, low-income communities of color, food and farm worker communities, small businesses in the food system. And the result of the engagement, the 2-year engagement, was the development of San Diego County Food Vision 2030. So I'm going to put the link on the chat box here, but essentially this Food Vision 2030, we're positioning it to be a decade-long plan and movement, and to create a more sustainable just food system in San Diego County that really everyone can get behind. It's supposed to be very ambitious because it's supposed to offer a place for everybody to belong. And so what it is 3 goals: racial justice, fight climate change, and build resilience. And under 3 goals, there's 10 objectives that are associated with Food Vision 2030. And we started this planning process with the high-level goals in mind. Initially, it was racial justice and climate change, and the most pressing social issues of our time. And because of the pandemic, we added a 3rd goal, resiliency, because what we noticed with the food system and the disruptions in it. And I want to talk about the 3 goals just when I talk about the issues of the food system, because I think it paints a picture on what's wrong with the food system today. So the racial justice, cultivate justice goal, we elevated this because access to resources connected to our food system are really divided along racial lines, whether it's access to healthy food, like Claire talked about, capital, land, business ownership, housing, due to history and continued racialized practices. And secondly, climate change. So, really the truth is our industrialized food system, by our unhealthy economic system, is the biggest culprit to climate change, around up to 35% right now, the UN says, contributing to global greenhouse gases from deforestation, industrialized agriculture, distribution, waste. And so, but really on the flip side, the most impactful solution to climate change is building a more localized food system that regenerates and recirculates resources. It's the most natural way to go. When we think about sustainability, we go to the farmer's market, we do composting. So it's very much within our control. And it's quite one of the most impactful solutions around climate change. And thirdly, building resilience. So the pandemic has really shaken up this food system that is just not nimble and agile enough. And we have small scale food producers in this region, farmers and fishermen, and small food businesses that we could really be supporting to make sure that they are viable and they're part of the regional fabric, the local economy. So we need to do a better job of creating better safety nets for communities, but also more nimble systems that can really tap into these local beautiful assets that we have and make sure that we can be resilient and not rely on the big system that is just not nimble enough for future catastrophes that could potentially happen. And the role of the Alliance now is to really steward this ambitious vision that's been created. And we call ourselves the stewards because we're not the doers of the vision necessarily. Everybody's doing it, but we're helping to nudge it along. So building an infrastructure to build capacity and bolster this movement, and really connecting to the wisdom of the network of folks and communities. So our desire for Food Vision 2030 is to sort of be like, I'm trying out analogies, but sort of be like the initial seeds. And then for us occasionally to be the rain if needed, so the beautiful ecosystem of the garden can emerge and everybody can, find their own strengths. Somebody might be the trees, somebody might be this beautiful flower, and they all need to blossom and flourish and depend on each other for the ecosystem to thrive. So I like to see it as like a garden. Everybody needs to belong in this ecosystem, and we all need to play a part. So that's sort of who we are. In a nutshell.
So thank you for that. Ladies, one thing that I noticed that all of you said and had in common was that this is a systemic issue based upon race or economics. So is there a way that together with the organizations that maybe we could, I'd like to think that in a year or 5 years, or hopefully by the time my nieces grow up, the systemic issue could be resolved. I'm hopeful, but is there a way that we can resolve the issue enough that maybe food nutrition and food insecurity could maybe be less in a few years?
Who wants to take that one?
Maybe I feel like Ariel and Ellie, you have more of the policy side. Maybe that's a good.
Well, I think when we talk about systems, it's not just about the policies changing, but also the people in the position of power to make those choices. And it's deep roots, as we continue on these analogies that Ellie's beautifully laid out. It's super deep roots as a person who works within a system and trying to kind of like reimagine what we can do and how we can change it. And I did pull out this stat just because, it's Black History Month, right? And the reality is that these issues impact people of color, BIPOC folks, way more than they impact our white communities. So even in 2019 in San Diego, 25% of the total population was nutrition insecure, and 44% of the Black population in San Diego, which is not very big, was nutrition insecure. So I think that goes back to the issue really being tied to a system, and a system, exactly like Claire said, that's built on racism. So how do we, and again, to Ellie's point too, with them cultivating justice to being the #1 goal of the San Diego Food Vision, I think that's what needs to be front and center. And we know that operating in the capitalist economy that we're in, that means creating economic equity, that means redistribution of wealth, that means, a lot of these things that are going to be pretty uncomfortable for us to shift and to change. But I think that's the only way that we're going to see true improvements and differences for your nieces and nephews and all of our future generations.
Yeah, and to the fact that this issue has been built through hundreds of years of extractive practices. my team is like trying to have me massage my messaging, but it's so we can't fix this overnight. However, I think there's bright spots, of the idea of food sovereignty is to bring power back into communities. So, the most direct path to that is to make sure folks that represent communities are in positions of power, in elected official offices, in decision-making tables where resources are being allocated and policy decisions are being made. And I feel like I've seen hope recently, at the county level with the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Vargas, and the other progressive supervisors making, doing some big moves. But of course, it's going to require a lot of vigilance, because it's about culture shift. It's really about reimagining the relationships and creating more healing and trust. So that culture shift work requires us all to be vigilant and to really shift the dynamics wherever possible, like, area on the inside, Claire working in the community. It's really an ongoing journey. But what I also think is really important is for us to be comfortable with the discomfort and for teaching our children to be comfortable with the discomfort too. And like knowing the entire history, because they still don't teach that at schools. So I think that's a really important element of the work, so that we continue to nurture future generations that are more aware of the systems that we're operating within.
I'll just to add on that, I know we have to name white supremacy when we're talking about systemic change, when we're talking about racism. We have to name the problem, which is white supremacy. And we all, I'm a white woman, so I have the opportunity. I'm not sure, I can't see who all is in the audience right now, but we have power when we're thinking about, is this change possible? We have power in this room, in the conversations that we're having with our friends, in our business, places of business, and if we are in situations where we are funding or supporting organizations from a philanthropic standpoint, we have influence to change the conversation. And I think, nonprofits, I may be going on a tangent right now, but me and Ellie talk about this all the time. But, there's a lot of inherent power balance within the nonprofit philanthropic community, where funders are telling, nonprofits what their communities need, rather than our communities saying what's needed. And I think, this goes across, the nonprofit sector. We see it in our government, where we really need to be looking to our communities, and particularly the communities most marginalized, as the experts in solutions. And I think that's where the change is. And that's, we see that when we have, more representation in office, but we also see that when resources are distributed based on what community has asked for and community has said is a solution, rather than, coming in and saying, oh, I think that this will work. Or, kind of Band-Aid solutions, rather than addressing the systems. So maybe a tangent, but everything is so interconnected in this conversation. We can't have a conversation about food access and food justice and nutrition security without having a conversation about, white supremacy and racism, frankly.
So I'm Black. As somebody who would like to always try to say, like, educate people, I understand, like, you can't walk a mile in my shoes because you're not my race to understand that. But most people will know in their life maybe what it is to be hungry, maybe not starving, maybe not, I'm trying to use the terms that you used, the nutrition insecure, but how do you educate somebody who doesn't understand what it is to be hungry? And I'm not talking like I skipped a meal today, so my stomach's growling, but like hungry. Because I feel like if you can understand, maybe that's part of breaking some of that system down. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. I wonder if we're not the best people to ask, because I don't know that we have the lived experience, right?
Okay.
Just to be completely frank, I think we all have passion for this field for one reason or another, but it might not be as a result of lived experience.
I think one thing is we've, like, as a society, and the pandemic has exacerbated this, we've become so disconnected from humanity and from compassion and just recognizing that you know that's a person too. Like, we all feel as people. So we've kind of disconnected from seeing other people as people. You know, we see defining characteristics. And so I think if we can talk to people about compassion and having compassion, you know, if that's the conversation, you know, is compassion for someone else who's experiencing something that's really challenging. And we can all understand that because we've experienced something challenging, whether it's, you know, being really hungry, or whether it's, you know, having a bad day at work, or whatever it is. And we want someone, you know, we have a loved one who says, wow, that's horrible. You know, how can I support you? What can I do for you? And so if we can, you know, I know it's important to talk about like the big issues, but we also have to be able to, kind of like you say, we have to be able to narrow back in on the individual and like just seeing people as other people. So being able to also bring in that piece. I don't know if it's the answer, but you know, getting back to what Ellie said, there's a culture shift that has to happen. And if we can do that in our own spaces and really bring back, you know, there's sympathy where you're like, oh, that's too bad, you know, so sorry for you. And there's empathy where you really feel, you know, what that other person's feeling. And compassion is care alongside empathy, is actually really caring what someone is experiencing. So I think just being people, you know.
And I think there's something to that, sorry, Peggy, but the systems are also built by people. So even though we're over here like saying this is a huge issue and it's systemic and there's, you know, like we don't really know where to start, like the shifts are going to take a lot of work and it's hard and it's going to be grueling. The systems are also built by people. And so if we can just shift the power dynamics, which is literally just power in numbers, more people wanting the system to function differently, it can. And I think that goes back to Claire's point of like having compassion for one another and wanting a system that is better for everyone, you know. And if it's better for my neighbor, it's definitely going to be better for me as well. And recognizing that, right? Like improving the system for someone else is going to improve the system for everyone.
Okay, so one of my questions was, it sounds like the field is very collaborative. Can you please share a couple of examples of how we can work together to maybe put an impact into this issue?
Check out Food Vision 2030 first and foremost. And it kind of goes, I see there's a question from Natalia in the Q&A of what would you recommend to someone that wants to get involved to help make a difference? What would be the initial 3 steps to follow? So that would be my first step. If you don't know anything about the San Diego food system and you want to learn more about what the issues are, and then I'll hand it over to Ellie because I don't want to speak on behalf of that vision.
No, you can always speak on behalf of the vision, Ariel. You have my permission. Well, we're launching a membership program around this Food Vision 2030 this April. And, you know, Olivewood and the county are members, but we also open to individual members as well. For advocates to get involved. You can become engaged in our policy campaigns and our various different educational programming that'll be happening to learn more about food system issues. And we'll be working on a policy platform. Around the same time, we'll be launching the policy campaigns when the membership program launches. So most likely one of the priorities that we'll be working on will be public land use for urban agriculture use, so that folks can really participate in food sovereignty and can take back control of the land. A lot of the land that public entities own. And another volunteer opportunity is many of our network partners have volunteer programs, food banks, gleaning groups, school gardens. So there's a lot of opportunities to get involved in programs and projects. And lastly, individually, we can really take a lot of action to improve the food system. So really getting to know your local food sources, the farmers, fishermen, wasting less food. We waste 40% of the food that we produce in this country is very inefficient. And you can also start growing things by yourself to really see things come to life. Because when you start growing food, then that's when you realize how much work it is. And you're not going to waste very much when you start growing your own food. So those are kind of some 3 different levels of ways that you can get engaged.
Are you done, Ellen?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay, cool. I don't want to step on you. But to get back to your question too, Peggy, about collaboration, I think the Food Vision 2030 Stewardship Committee, you know, that's in the food system, San Diego Food System Alliance umbrella. There's so much collaboration that's happening within that. And as Ellie mentioned, just the development of the food vision, you know, Olivewood was one of several different organizations that worked alongside the Food System Alliance to reach out to our community to really get a lot of input and feedback on the development of the food vision. And there were, how many specific organizations did you partner with on that, Elliot, that were really community specific?
Oh, like we had about 13 community partners doing engagement in various different communities.
And those were to make sure that communities that have been, you know, most impacted by, you know, food system inequities were, you know, had voices in the making of the food vision. So that's a really cool collaborative effort. Another thing that Olivewood is involved with, and I kind of mentioned our partnership with Brightside Produce. They're an organization that works, that's through SDSU, and they have student interns who, or students who kind of run the program, and they aggregate produce from different organizations. They're really trying to, you know, incorporate more local food, and that goes to corner stores. And so they help to kind of decrease the barrier of entry for corner stores in neighborhoods that are what historically has been called food deserts, but we would encourage the term food apartheid which addresses, the kind of systemic reasons for neighborhoods to not have easy access to food. And so increases, access to food in communities, and then, local food as well. And so that's a cool collaboration that we're working on. And then we're a fiscal sponsor for a smaller nonprofit that runs a local community garden. So there are lots of cool ways, and that's just us, but across the food system, I know Ellie and Ariel can share more cool collaboration examples.
Well, I mean, even just building off that, we also work closely with Brightside and actually have one of their folks on our staff to help support their operations. So it just goes to show, like we said at the beginning, the food system is massive, and that's also what I put in the chat to you, Natalia. There are so many different facets and segments of the food system, but depending on your personal interest, which I think will make you most excited about the work, we can definitely give recommendations of how to plug in.
Okay, so I was taking notes while you were talking. Ellie, I believe you mentioned a policy campaign for public land use. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's just a concept we're working on. It's probably going to be one of the priorities, but the county and various different kind of public agencies own a lot of land that's not used. So the idea is to see if we can activate it for urban agriculture, for community use, community gardens and small farms. And ultimately, it will be nice if we can move it back to communities, community ownership. I think for folks that come from cultures, we have a lot of refugee communities, different communities that are that come to the US from different countries. And for folks that have sort of these traditional cultures with practices that, are passed down through generations, land is really important. Cultivating the land and the relationship with the land is really important for people. And it's a very healing part of the process, because we are very disconnected as a society from each other, but also Earth. And so I think that's part of the healing process. So land is a really critical part of the food system. And we were hoping to start with that as one of the priorities. Right now, talking to the supervisors, and they also have expressed, Supervisor Vargas is very interested in food sovereignty and is interested in the land issue. So.
Okay. And then, so other than the volunteer activities and the public policies that have been mentioned, is there any way that, or any means in which Junior League can get involved with this issue?
Yeah. I mentioned before, there's the kind of the membership program that we're launching in April. And there's also volunteer opportunities with our partners like the food banks and gleaning groups that glean from backyard, produce from backyards, school gardens, and different programs that are available like Olivewood. And then also you can take individual action to participate in our food system.
I put in the chat there too. There's a current campaign. It's Food for All, and it's essentially trying to include in the state budget funding for all undocumented folks, regardless of immigration status, to be able to access some CalFresh benefits. I keep hearing feedback, so I'm sorry if you all hear that too. And I think that is a really great current opportunity that if Junior League wants to get behind specific legislation, that would be something I would recommend signing on to. And then also in San Diego right now, there's a sidewalk vending ordinance that is going through the City of San Diego's process. So it was just heard by one of the committees, the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee, yesterday, and will go to full City Council. And if you can imagine, sidewalk vending obviously includes non-food related, but food is a huge potential product to be sold through our sidewalk vendors. And a lot of times that's people who are already engaging in sort of the informal economy. And it's a really great opportunity to support food entrepreneurs, especially those who might also be undocumented or otherwise not pursuing a traditional job. So those are a couple of other opportunities that come to mind.
I think, yeah, Ellie and Ariel probably are the best to cover some of the policy stuff. But a lot of times food related policy can kind of get bumped up underneath climate action related activities. So like the San Diego Climate Action Plan that's in review right now. I think there's still some time to get comments in. Am I true? Am I right or am I wrong?
It's being updated. So we're still operating under the 2018 Climate Action Plan, and we're in the process of updating it, yes.
Okay, cool. So that, sometimes those are places where action and advocacy can happen. Volunteerism, Olive Wood's always looking for wonderful volunteers for group volunteer opportunities, as well as individuals who have interest in things like volunteering for programs. We have a field trip program, so we're always looking for folks to support that. We're actually currently looking for volunteers to support our new school-based program, which is working in National School District at the 10 district schools, and we're providing environmental education to grade TK through 6, and we're working all day every day. We're hustling, and so we're looking for volunteers to support that program as well, in particular. So volunteering is a really great way. It's also a great way to get connected, within the food community, and to really start getting active with, hands in the dirt or in the kitchen, but building those connections. And I think building community is a really important part too of improving our food system. Is reconnecting with each other. Project New Villages Agreement.
Okay. Reading through one of the questions that was in the chat, that would any of the panelists know the percentage increase of food? I'm assuming, Natalia, can you write in the chat what you mean by that exactly? Maybe the increase in food due to gardens? Oh, prices that have raised in the past year as it impacts families in San Diego.
Yeah, and we're not even really feeling the impacts of that quite. Inflation increases, and the true implications of the pandemic, I think, are yet to be felt from like an economic perspective. But I don't personally have any stats on that particular issue. I don't know, Ellie, if you do offhand, or.
No, I don't. Sorry. Offhand.
But it's a real issue, that's for sure. And it goes to show how much more important, especially in a place like San Diego where we have sunshine, 300 days of the year, how important it is for us to be able to grow our own food and have spaces to grow our own food, right? To Ellie's point in terms of trying to create land access. And so that might also be a really cool thing for the Junior League to get behind, is some sort of distribution of resources for folks in your membership to share out to their communities to be able to grow their own food in your homes. Might not seem super impactful, but I think, again, to Claire's point, the more we can like get people back to engaging with their humanity, which is, we know soil is a big part of that, the microbiome, the more we can, connect with each other again.
I would add, and that was beautiful, Ariel. I don't have any stats, but we are hearing from our community that the price increases are impacting people's ability to get the food they need, and that's also happening alongside a decrease in state and federal resources to kind of at the height of the pandemic, there was a lot of resources coming towards families to support, a lot of rental assistance and stimulus checks and things like that really helped, moratorium on evictions. And now a lot of those things are starting to slowly disappear. And so we're finding that it's kind of like a double whammy of some of that support being taken away at the same time that prices are increasing, alongside housing kind of skyrocketing as well. I know we're all experiencing that.
So one last question that I have, just because I like to end things on a more personal note, if you could have a personal goal for nutrition security, what would your personal goal be? Did I stump you?
Tough one. You gotta give us a
hard
second.
Question. Well, I'll give you my personal goal. I don't know if it's related to nutrition security. Maybe it is, because everything I do is all interconnected. But I'm trying to step into more braver, authentic places. I often feel like on a daily basis, I'm interacting with people with power, and I'm sort of naturally a people pleaser. So I tend to sort of shy away from having authentic conversations where I feel if there are kind of unhealthy dynamics or practices, I'm not able to speak up, but I feel like I've been more actively trying to shift the dynamics. So we are creating a more equitable and just society, just one person interaction at a time. whatever shifts that makes, I'm trying to do that in a more tactful way. I'm trying to be more authentic to myself when I do that. So yeah, that's sort of my personal goal is try to do that even better this year.
Even better.
The human interaction.
Okay.
I would echo, Ellie said it so eloquently, and we have lots of conversations on that topic, particularly lately. So I would say that from like a kind of big picture power moving perspective that ultimately will impact nutrition security, but then from like a really specific perspective, the county recently approved the microenterprise home kitchens operations program here in San Diego County, and the San Diego Food System Alliance and membership and kitchenistas who are in Olivewood's community, all were really big advocates for the program. And there are some ladies in our community who are interested in starting these. And so from like a small scale, I really want to make sure that for our community, that program is really successful. And so, doing whatever it takes, if it's trainings, if it's finding resources, if it's helping to fill out applications. And that's really an opportunity for people to create like home restaurants. They could be takeout restaurants, they could be, you know, people come and eat, but it's really an opportunity for people who, you know, maybe have been excluded from those types of opportunities to, you know, offer locally, you know, locally prepared small business, culturally relevant foods right in their communities. And so that's a really exciting thing that I'm thinking about.
That is super exciting. This is definitely a really hard question. And as the two of them were talking, I was like, oh, this, oh, this, oh, this. But what's kind of resonated with me lately is we always talk about like community in this sort of concept as if it exists over here, and again, not as if we're all a part of it. I want to like bring that back to myself and these kind of working in other spaces. What can I do as like a neighbor, as a member of where I personally live, to ensure that everyone around me also feels safe and secure and has access to food and the things that bring them nourishment, and also, like to Ellie's point, like say hi to them every day and not put my head down when I'm walking past them. You know what I mean? So localizing that for myself and my actual neighbors, I think is a goal that is probably very achievable too. So hold me to it.
Okay. We have another question that says, is Olive Woods Garden open for live tours?
Yes, it is. And actually we have what's called quarterly lunch and learn with our wonderful executive director. And we have our first in-person one coming up on it's Friday, March 11th, and it's from 12 to 1:30, and it's like a bring your own lunch. We'll have some hummus and veggies for you to munch on, but we'll do a tour of the gardens and then kind of a sit down Q&A and time to hang. And then we're hoping to restart monthly weekend tours, which we did pre-pandemic and are slowly trying to get up and running. But we're also open to scheduling private tours if there's a big enough group to schedule something like that. You know, we'd love to chat about that too. We love having people back at the gardens, so please visit.
Another question is, can we organize a tour for Junior League of San Diego?
You 100% can. You're talking to the right person. Peggy's got my info.
I will write that down.
Awesome.
Done.
Thanks, Natalia.
All right. Any other questions? All right, ladies, do you have any closing words for us?
I would just say thank you for inviting us to this space. I hope it was what you needed it to be. I know it's we maybe threw a lot of maybe heavy at you, but it's important. And I think looking at both the systems and the really personal level is really important, especially as we kind of figure out what this next phase looks like for our world. I think that connection and, you know, building community and connecting with our neighbors is going to be really important. So thank you all for having us. And we're, of course, or I don't want to speak for you two, but happy to answer any follow-up questions. I can pop my email in the chat. We love to have you involved in the food justice world in San Diego.
Yeah, thank you for me. I'm inspired every single day by this issue and the people I meet that's working hard around food justice. And I truly believe that it is one of the most impactful levers for transforming our society. So really encourage you to get involved. Really excited that you are interested in this issue. and I hope that you're able to kind of see a different side of the issues of food outside of sort of the traditional way of looking at food access, and that you will get involved in this movement. Thank you.
And echo all of that. Thank you so much. And I'm currently reading Braiding Sweetgrass, which I bet both Claire and Ellie have read or picked up over the years. And if you haven't, I highly, highly recommend it. But I was reading a chapter last night. It's by this woman who is both an ethnobotanist and she's Indigenous, and she's relearning her Indigenous language and talking about how the difficulties between English and her Indigenous language, because all of the nouns that have life are words in our verbs. So like a flower, we wouldn't refer to it as an object, you'd refer to it as this living thing. So it's a verb as opposed to a noun. And I just want to take that with me, and I hope that we can all take that with us as we think about the food system and everything involved in it. Almost all of it is living, right? And the only way we can continue to sustain it is if we're all take the time to think about this most prolific thing in our lives and how we can make choices to really contribute to a more sustainable, healthy, nutritious, beautiful food system. So thank you all.
Thank you for being with us, ladies. And I wrote down all those new terms that you gave me because I am super passionate about this cause. I grew up in Pennsylvania where it's all farmland. So I'm always shocked when people, I guess, because I grew up with it, don't know how to farm, because that was like second nature to me. So I appreciate all of the knowledge that you were able to give us tonight, and thank you for attending.
Thank you
so much. It was great to meet you, Peggy.
Have a
Thank you, ladies. Bye.
Bye.